In less than 2 months, the United States will enter into a Republican era. The party will hold a trifecta, controlling the executive and legislative branches of government. President-elect Trump is coming to Washington with a list of promises and a loyal cabinet. But just a month ago, the odds were split down the middle between Vice President Kamala Harris and Trump. Polls continue to show a neck-and-neck race across the United States and the battleground states. But on Election Day, Trump was able to sweep all 7 key swing states and the popular vote. It's reminiscent of 2016, where Trump's win shocked pollsters. Here to go on the record is Scott Tranter, Director of Data Science from Decision Desk HQ. Scott, it's great to see you. I hope you're rested up as much as you can be after the election. But look, congratulations. Decision Desk HQ was the first to call the election. At what point in the night did you know it would be Trump?
After we called Georgia and North Carolina, both of those were not eked out victories. If you remember, they were a little bit early in the night, around 9-10 o'clock. And, VP Harris was doing what she needed to do in terms of vocals, but Donald Trump was just doing more. It was pretty clear that he was going to go into the upper Midwest with a pretty good head of steam. And look, he's going to win the popular vote, it very much looks like, and he's going to get over 300 electoral votes, which is a pretty good mark for him.
Senate Republicans elected South Dakota Senator John Thune as their next leader. He'll be taking over for Mitch McConnell, who has held the position for almost 20 years, I should say. He is an even-tempered and seasoned legislator, but we know Thune's relationship, although it's gotten a bit closer with Trump over the past few years. He did oppose Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. So, Scott, can Trump expect 100% loyalty from John Thune?
That's interesting. I think Trump thinks he can expect it. But John Thune is a very good politician. He's been in DC a long time. He's looking at, a GOP trifecta over the next 2 years. I think as long as the priorities are aligned, I think they're going to work pretty well together. It's when those priorities get out of line, I think you're going to see some fireworks. But because I think John Thune is independent enough, not necessarily to toe the line on everything.
So, moving to the House, Speaker Mike Johnson will hold the Speaker's gavel with a very slim majority. It'll obviously be a numbers game for him, but what are the challenges he faces, not only within his own conference, but also in the House itself?
Well, that slim majority is probably the biggest challenge, right? Like, I think we're about to enter the season of Chip Roy and Thomas Massey, right? Q1, we've got that debt ceiling vote. We've got reconciliation. All of a sudden, you've got 1 or 2 members who can band together and really cause some problems. And Mike Johnson may have to look to Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic caucus to pass some of these must passes, like debt ceiling, budget, those types of things.
Moving back to the Senate, we know that incumbent Pennsylvania Senator Bob Casey has not yet conceded that state's race, but his Republican challenger, Dave McCormick, was invited to Senate orientation. So what's the latest in that vote count, and do you expect we'll be headed to a recount anytime soon?
Yeah, so, as of right now, as of Wednesday midday, it's the vote count has it within recount range. We'll see where it ends up as the rest of the state continues to count votes. If I'd have to, McCormick's ahead. It looks to be able to hold it out, but there's enough ballots out there where we're unsure of the outcome. And so that's kind of what DDHQ is waiting to see, is exactly how many ballots are left, because we just don't know, and exactly how they break. But I think this is going to be in recount range when it's all said and done. But we'll see if, the Casey campaign presses a recount or decides to concede.
Scott, here at the Hill, after any major political event, whether it's a debate or an election night or an inauguration, we talk about the winners and losers. And we know who the obvious winner and loser was from this election. But who would you say were the winners, plural, and losers of this election cycle as a whole?
Look, if I guess you can paint me as a DC insider, but if you're Susie Wiles, you're Chris LaCivita, you defied some of the chattering class expectations. You basically went wire to wire, working on one of the most difficult campaigns for probably one of the most difficult candidates. And Susie Wiles, it looks like she's going to ride that to the chief of staff of the White House, which is, if you're her, if you're a DC insider, that's something you really want. So definitely a winner. I think some of the losers here in Washington, DC is going to be some of the Democratic establishment. Look, they ran ran a very strong campaign by all accounts. Just the metrics that I look are, Americans voted for them. So their message worked, but more Americans voted for Donald Trump. And so the Republican message was a little bit better this time. And I think they're going to have to take a look at the Democratic consulting class and figure out, okay, what do we need to do to win? Because it's obviously we got to do a little bit more.
So, on that question of the vote count, we know that it has narrowed predictably in a number of these states since election night. But how did the polls miss such a decisive win for Trump? I mean, I think at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, what Decision Desk had it predict the forecast. I know that forecasting is very different from polls, but what, a 54% chance for Trump? So it was still pretty down the middle.
Yeah, well, and this is always the nuance, right? So 54% chance for Trump, that doesn't necessarily imply whether one candidate's going to
Right.
win by a lot or a little. And again, it's a fair criticism, right? You look at that and you're like 54% is close. It doesn't necessarily mean a close outcome. It just means it's close on who could go either way. And I think what we learned was, and this is something you and I have talked about all year, is look, those upper Midwestern states tend to vote in a block. So if one candidate wins one, they're probably going to go all one way just because of how that they vote. And same with the Sun Belt states. And Donald Trump was able to secure both and kind of get that landslide victory. I think when the dust settles, and I bet we're going to be talking about polls in the coming weeks, we're going to look at this was a polling error against Donald Trump, but probably pretty small compared to what it was in 2020 and 2016.
So, we talk about that polling error and, comparing it to 2016. So, how will pollsters adjust moving forward? What does that process look like when they look at what went wrong or what they didn't catch?
I think they're going to have to look at their data collection methods, right? They're just it's not like it was, and this is what we've been talking about for 10 years. No one just picks up their phone anymore, especially cell phone. And so I think when the dust settles, and ask me again in a few weeks, the pollsters who use mixed mode, a variety of online, cell phone, text messaging, creative ways in which to get voters to respond to these polls, they're going to be the ones who fare the best. Whereas the pollsters who rely specifically on random digit dialing or just straight phones, I think we're going to look at them as outdated methods. And so I think that's where the polling is going to change. Is you're going to see some of these pollsters move to a variety of data collection methods just to get where the voters are, and they're not always on their phone.
Scott Tranter, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it for What's America Thinking. I'm Julia Manchester. Come back next week and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel.